PDF version of this presentation that you're going to be seeing today. A couple of housekeeping items. We will keep you muted during the whole presentation, but if you do have questions, feel free to type those questions into the question box of the GoTo software. Just if you've joined us before, same thing we've done before. And if you can, keep the questions generic, if you can, so it applies to everybody who's joining us on the presentation. If you do have questions that are specific to a job or kind of a specific situation that you're looking to get some guidance on, feel free to email us at oshpd.fdd@oshpd.ca.gov. Again, that's oshpod.fdd.oshpd.ca.gov. And I'll give you that email address again towards the end of the presentation. If we do experience some transmission difficulties, for example, audio or visual problems, we will go ahead and ask you to log off of the presentation and then log back in using the same link that you received to log into this presentation, and we'll begin where we left off. Today we do have, for a presenter, we have Monica Colosi, who is part of the ISU team. ISU is Inspection Services Unit. And we do have a guest speaker who has been kind enough to join us and give us some kind of insights from the industry. His name is Dave Carina. So with that being said, Monica, I go ahead and hand the presentation over to you. So all yours.
Thank you, Cesar. Good morning to everybody. And also want to remind, if you missed the prior sessions, you would like to have the PDF, email us as well at the same email that Cesar shared before, the oshpod.fdd.isu@oshpod.ca.gov. So that being said, let's start. I hope that this webinar will be helpful. Bear with me. My apologies for my accent. So as for the agenda, we will talk about the exam, the IOR exam, how is the best way that we would like to share how to arrive to answer to the questions, and then also how to be a strong IOR. And this one is related to know the code, how to read a construction document, how to communicate, especially with the hospital owner, and about the kickoff meeting. And we will talk about different responsibilities. And then we will talk also about the schedule, difference between construction schedule, inspection schedule. We will talk about how to review ACD, ASI. We will explain better those. And we will talk about the performance of the IOR. That being said, let's start with the sample of the questions. Nobody knows the code 100%. If you know, you are extremely good, but nobody knows really the code 100%. The key is how to research the code. This means to know the table of contents. And I'm not saying that you also should memorize, and I don't tell you, of course, how you should have the knowledge about the table of contents. But what we want to share is that table of contents is the key about how to navigate and to arrive to the specific section that, in this case, for the exam, is what you need to know to arrive to the response. And later on, when you will be at the job site, how to arrive to whatever subject you need to talk about and try to figure it out, whatever problem is. So let's start and go with the first question. And this is an admin code question. In accordance with section 7151F, or when required by the office, who shall submit to the office a verified compliance report with their signature and based on their own personal knowledge? A, the architect, B, the engineer, C, the inspector, D, the approved agency, E, the special inspector, F, contractor, owner, builder, G, all the above. So how you should arrive to provide the response for this? Let me try to change, okay. The admin code, the part 1 of the code is almost like a Bible for you and as a table of contents like any other code. And remember, I mentioned that the table of contents is the way to guide you to the specific content. So here is the list of the chapter. Chapter 7 is about health facilities, and this is what the exam is about, right? So by going to chapter 7, what do you see? You will go to the chapter 7, and if the slide cooperates, yes. So you have on the chapter 7 different articles. Now, you know that the question is about the VCR. So where do you think VCR should be included? It's during construction. Therefore, the article 4 is the article that you need to go take a look because it's specific construction. And so, oops, sorry. Go back up. There is a little bit of delay, my apologies. So not only you can find the VCR portion in the article 4, but the question also directs you to the same question. The question said section 7, 151F. And so when you go there, because in this case, the question directs you to the specific question section, or you know that about the VCR, you need to arrive to the article 4, you arrive to verify compliance report. And here, highlighted in yellow, is the list of people that needs to submit to the VCR. And so it's listed the architect, the engineer, the inspector of record, the approved agency, special inspector, contractor, owner, builder. So in this case, the answer will be G. Let's go to another question, and in this case, we're going to have the architecture question. In hospitals, which one of the following is not required to be included within a dressing room for a nuclear medicine space? A, nurse call station, B, seat or bench, C, mirror, D, provisions for hanging clothes. So here, how you arrive to the response. Back to the index guideline under hospital, there is a specific nuclear medicine, that 1224.34. Once you are there, start to look for patient dressing rooms because that is the specific question for the exam. And by the way, I want to remind that these samples of the questions are not the same questions that you will have at the exam. So these are samples that you will never see at the exam, at the actual exam. So once you are on the patient dressing, you read the requirement. And so by reading the requirement, what do you notice? You notice that the seat bench is listed, the mirror is listed, provisions for hanging clothes is also listed. The nurse call station is not listed. Therefore, that is the right answer. And now let's go to another example for mechanical question. In fuel gas piping, per pressure testing and inspection, the minimum test pressure and test duration for hospital with fuel gas piping at house pressure should be no less than, and here we have the 4 options, the 3 psi for 30 minutes, 5 psi for 15 minutes, 10 psi for 15 minutes, and 5 psi for 30 minutes. So how do you arrive to the actual response? So once again, you go to the index that shows the chapter 13, which is the fuel gas piping, which is our question. From here, look into the chapter 13, and you find the test pressure section. The question asked is for the minimum test pressure and test duration for the hospital. So you go to the section 13.3, the test pressure, and highlighted is basically the answer, which would be the response C, 10 psi for 15 minutes. One more example for code question. I truly promise that this is the last one for code question example. And this is for the electrical. In elevator, dumb waiters, escalator, moving walks, platform, stairway, chairlift, a sump pump located in an elevator hoist should be permitted to be cord connected. The cord should be a hard usage oil resistant type of a length not to exceed which length and should be protected from physical damage. So here we have the 4 options. And how do you arrive to the right answer? So in chapter 6 of the electrical code, special equipment arrives to the elevator is the section 620 is highlighted in yellow. Now going to the section 620, you need to look for the cord connection, where cord connection should be. This is in the wiring method. So we move forward and keep flipping the pages of the section, the 620, you will arrive to the wiring method. And this is the part 3, section 620.21. And you will find information for your response. So here highlighted, it gives that the cord requirement length is not to exceed 6 feet. Therefore, the answer would be B. So far, so good, I hope. So these are the samples that I said for the code. But now let's go and talk about the plans. Who needs to do the exam for the plans is Class A and Class B. So Class A also is in overall. The questions for the code are for architectural, structural, anchorage bracing, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, fire, life safety. Class B is like Class A minus the structural. So keep in mind that. And what you will see in the plans. In general, the typical drawings are general sheets where there are symbols, legend, abbreviation, general notes. Then there are plans, elevations, sections, and then in a larger scale, there are more plans, more elevation, more sections. The details are standalone because the scale, of course, is different. And then there are also schedules and diagram. So now, just one example for the plan question is in the OR room, the height of the stainless steel wainscot is, and here there are the multiple options. So how you arrive to the response to understand the height of the wainscot. A vertical information, of course, so you cannot find on the floor plan. You need to go to the reference, you need to arrive to the interior elevation. You look the interior elevation, you look where the information is, in this case for the wainscot, and there is the answer, 4 feet. So if now I would like to ask you, can the IOR Class B inspect and approve structural elements? Think about, is a yes, is a no? So I said already before the difference between the Class A and Class B. The answer is no. Class B doesn't inspect the structural element. So now that we spoke about the exam and how to process to arrive to the response, let's talk about how to be a strong IOR. Clearly, since in order to become an IOR, you have to pass the code question, it means that the IOR needs to know the code. This is part of the IOR strength, as well knowing how to read plans, to read specifications, to understand ACD, ASI, RFIs, construction schedule, IOR log, and understand and identify the responsibility of the IOR, right? So the code. We all know code is not easy. There are lots of books for the code. So try again, like I said from the beginning, table of contents is something that you should figure it out how to memorize, because that will help you to guide whatever problem there is at the job site. And problems on site are a lot. So the best practice for your profession is to know how to navigate through the codes and be at the job site, understand what is going on. If a problem comes up, try not to rush for a response just because like this you can sound competent. No, analyze, think, then provide the response. Don't feel intimidated. If you feel the pressure from, my apologies, if you have pressure from the contractor or from the owner or from design professionals, try to push away this pressure. Be analytical, think, and then provide the response. The code improves and gets updates during time by time. And these are symbols that you notice in the book. Each symbol indicates something different. For example, the first symbol that you see indicates the changes that are made to a California amendment. And then the second symbol is for the deletion of the California amendment language. The third one is for a change of the ICC model code language. The next one is for the deletion of the ICC model code language. And the last two are for relocation of some information for text or table in other part of the code. I said there are many codes, and what happens when there are conflicts between codes? If the conflict is between general and specific requirements should be applicable. Reference codes and standards are considered part of the requirements. And what happens when there are conflicts, let's say, between provisions and reference code and standards? The provisions shall apply. Provisions of scope of the code shall take a precedence over provisions in the reference code standards. So now, if I want to ask you, where there is the conflict between a general requirement and a specific requirement, which requirement should be applicable? The general requirement or the specific requirement? The specific requirement. And I hope that you thought the same. So now, let's continue to talk about, trying to go back, perfect. The needs about knowledge for the IOR. IOR needs to know how to read approved construction document. And for construction document, I mean construction drawings and the specifications. Here there is a checklist that the design professional should use to provide a complete set of plans. Of course, depending on the scope of work, all this can be applicable or can be less. It depends again from the scope of work. But by default, by instinct also, you want probably to look only the drawings. But this is not everything. The specifications are also important, are part of the construction document. Code 7115 for the admin code refers to the specifications. These are part of the construction document. And how these specifications can be part of the project. Depending on the side of the project, there is a different type of format of the specifications. If there is a small project, usually the specifications are included in the drawings. But if the project is big, the size of the scope is big, it is better way to keep track on all the specifications, and that is the project manual that is divided in divisions, as you can see here. So now, if I ask you, what is part of the construction document? Construction drawings only, specifications only, or both construction drawings and specifications? I hope you answer construction drawings and specifications. Now, who hires the IOR? If you follow the prior sessions already, we spoke about it, but here is also a reminder. The hospital owner hires you. The hospital governing board or authority and the DPOR, they select the IOR. The hospital submit the application to the office, propose which IOR they would like to have, and eventually the office will provide the approval. This is how the process is. Before all the construction begins, there should be the pre-construction meeting, the kickoff meeting. This is a very important meeting. What happens during this meeting, and better say, what should be discussed during this meeting? Who should be part of this meeting? The DPOR, including also the staff OSHPD, the IOR, the owner, the construction manager, if he's part of the project, all of them should attend the meeting. Scope of the project, construction schedule, inspection schedule, IOR responsibility, goals, all of this should be discussed during the kickoff meeting. I will oversay, do not underestimate the kickoff meeting. The better you set up everything, the team set up better the pre-construction, the better the project could be, because there will be no misunderstanding. Now, what about the schedule? In the construction schedule, there are different information. There are milestones, there are inspection schedule, the construction phases, everything is included. The schedule might change during the construction, so you need to get always the updated construction schedule. The inspection is part of the construction schedule. So if I ask you, are construction schedule and inspection schedule the same? The answer is no. So now let's talk about the difference between changes, material changes versus non-material changes. The ASI, that is the Architect Supplemental Instruction, is a non-material change, like clarifications, equal substitution, relocation that do not require major modification that affect the code requirement. And instead, we have the material change that is the ACD, the Amended Construction Document. The ACD needs to be submitted for approval. Both ASIs and ACD needs to have the stamp for the DPOR. Always compare the approved drawing versus the ASI and ACD. Look the difference. Sometimes because whatever miscoordination or wherever, the ASI might be not even necessary, the ACD might be not necessary. So pay attention on the difference of the document, pay attention on what really is going on the construction, and try to give an advice, if possible, to the team. So now if I ask you another question, which document needs to be issued for material change? Would be the ASI or would be the ACD? The answer is the ACD. Now let's talk about performance of the IOR. The IOR should be familiar with many things. Should be familiar with the code, should be familiar with the PIN, which is the Police Intent Notice, should be familiar with the CAN, that is the Code Application Notice. Should be familiar with the entire contract document, for the drawings, for the specifications, all the requirements, should have knowledge about the project schedule, is on schedule for the inspections, should be familiar with hospital procedure, temporary barrier and egress requirement, as well as other requirement, other infection control, various parties involved with the project, emergency procedure, safety requirement, all the reports, including the radiology physicist, the medical equipment, engineering judgment, all of this is part of the IOR knowledge. What about the duties? 7145 for the admin code talks about the continuous inspections of work. The IOR should have a personal knowledge with the continuous inspection. Don't forget the IOR works under the DPOR. And this is the tricky part, because it's the owner that hires you, but you work under direction of the DPOR, which basically is a teamwork. The IOR should maintain a file of the approved construction document. Should keep at the job site not only those, but should keep also the field records. Should notify the office if there is a foundation trenches completion, or should also notify the office if there is a placing of concrete, and 48 hours prior those, it needs to be notified the office, or where there is a suspension of work for more than 2 weeks. So all of this per code, the IOR needs to notify the office. The office performs observation, and per the admin code 7147, if there is a violation of the code, a writing report will be issued describing the violation and also provide the code reference. Something happened there, Caesar. Let me go back.
Yeah,
No, it's okay. No big deal. Try to go to slide 51. It's okay.
That's interesting. How's that?
That works good. That's fine. Thank you, Caesar. So now, what about monitoring of the hospital inspector of records performance? So who is monitoring the IOR performance? OSHPD field monitors the IOR performance. The admin code 7213 is the actual code and says that if the IOR performance is not happening, the office will notify the inspector, the owner, the DPOR. A written notification will include the office findings, reference of the violation, and a statement of the office intent to issue a stop work order unless the violation gets resolved immediately and everything gets better. So what about suspensions, revocation? I know this is not a nice subject, but we need to share. Suspensions and revocation per admin code 7214 are determined by the office. And it depends from incompetent inspections, inadequate inspections, misrepresentation, misconduct, and or violation. So based upon consideration of the evidence presented, the office should determine whether or not reasonable grounds exist for the suspensions or revocation of the certification. The office will notify the certificate holder in writing. There is the opportunity to participate in a formal conference and or present additional evidence before a final determination is made, 15 days from the notice. Then there will be no more than other 15 days from the conference, the final decision from the office. So what is in a short way the suspension? When occurs the suspensions? Suspensions happens for solitary, limited, or isolated incident. Revocation happens for repeated or continuous deviation from the general standard. As certifications, one is revoked, is no longer valid, and may not be renewed. IOR may not apply a new certification for a period of 3 years from the date of the office final written determination that identified in the admin code 7214C. And what about the appeal? For the appeal, a final written determination of the office related to the suspension and or for the revocation of the certificate may be appealed by the certificate holder pursuant. I know it's lots of information, but you can find in the code, the admin code 7214. So in a very warm advice, what could be a good IOR performance? Be responsible, be respectful, know the code. Again, you cannot know the code 100%. You know, you need to learn how to navigate the code. Know the project, know the duties, be collaborative, have a good communication with the team. The team is not only the owner rep that hires you, but it's also the OSHPD field staff, the design professionals, the contractor, the CM if he's part of the project. Guide for working on project under OSHPD jurisdiction. That being said, I would like to introduce David Carina as our guest, and I hope to unmute Dave. Let me find his name, and I will unmute Dave. Bear with me, Dave. Here we go. You're in.
Okay, let's do a sound check on that. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Real good. Okay, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Dave Carina, and not representing myself, I'm representing ACIA, which is the American Construction Inspectors Association. It's a national organization of construction inspectors that's been around since 1954, and it's been my honor to be a two-time past president of them, and my current position with them is I'm the government agency liaison. So I'm looking at a lot of the stuff that Monica was presenting. Great job, Monica. Unbelievable. I can give you one tip is that the one thing that's frustrating when you're taking these exams is they always put the index at the back of the binders. That makes it really tough. And you're hearing these books slamming back and forth when you're in the test, and it can be distracting. Pardon me. Real easy tip. Take those indexes out, put them at the front of the binder. So the first thing you see when you open that up and tab those, you can highlight them, you can tab them. And that will help you navigate the code a lot more. That's the best tip I can give you for now. ACIA did a survey with a lot of our OSHPD IORs, and they all came up with a lot of tips on how to succeed as an IOR. And a lot of these do complement Monica's presentation. The first one is you heard over and over about learning the code. And IORs can't know every code, but they do know where to find it. Monica did a really great job on giving you a demonstration on how to navigate through the code. That's one thing that you want to learn how to do, is learn how to navigate. Once you get that down, you'll definitely shave seconds off your time when you're taking your exam, and it also carries on with you as you're working out in the field once you become an IOR. When you're out on your project, you want to read all of your documents, everything that comes across your desk or in your emails from the DPOR team, your plans, your specifications, any RFIs, ACDs, ASIs, submittals. Make sure you make notes of what changes they make on your plans. Another tip is that we got from someone else: review your project on the OSHPD Report Center regularly, so you can confirm approval of any change documents like ACDs, DSIs, and such. You can locate your field staff reports. If maybe sometimes they may forget to email them out, but they are going to be located on there. You can get a hold of the oils. If you don't know where to find it, you can go to your favorite search engine and just put in the words OSHPD Report Center. Another good source is checking the OSHPD Report Center and or the OSHPD website rather, and look for the pins and cans, the policy intent notices, and the code application notices. That will help you a lot to see what OSHPD's how they view the code. Get familiar with the California Administrative Code, Chapter 7, particularly to the construction section on Article 4. Another one that we got was California Administrative Code, Section 7-145, 2, 1 and 2. That covers the personal knowledge that an IOR is required to have. You can't get that from sitting in the trailer and waiting for somebody to just send you a piece of paper with an IR. You want to get out there and become one with your project. You want to get out there, get familiar, look around, read your documents, refer to your details, and keep an eye on the project. That's also something that Monica brought up. Maintaining your communication with your DPOR team. They depend on you as their eyes and ears out on the project. Transparency and communication are key elements to being a strong IOR. Pre-construction meetings, you want to check every spec section for the requirement and document the meeting. Review the spec section prior to each pre-con for each trade or scope and identify your role as your prior to the meeting. You want to provide OSHPD candid information regarding your time commitment to the project and your application for a project. You don't want to get in trouble in the long run because, as Monica brought out in the CAC 7-214, that's the section on IOR suspension or revocation. We want to make sure that we're walking that thin line and making sure we're on the side of honesty here. Everybody needs to maintain their credibility at a high level. When it comes to OSHPD field site visits, they can both be scheduled or unscheduled at any time. The unscheduled ones, I've had people ask ACIA many times, can the IOR decline a surprise visit? The answer would be no. Be prepared for the scheduled visits. Have an agenda that includes your offsite special inspections, project TIO, drawings, your deficiency logs, NCN logs, RFI logs, construction schedule, your daily reports, project completion percentage, any problems. Let them know that you're competent in what you're doing out there and that you know your project really well. Also be aware of the project scope that's listed in the TIO. Discuss with the field staff, have documentation ready for TIO items that are ready for sign off. Don't wait till the end of the project. I remember Joe bringing that up the last time that I just did my recertification back in February. For unscheduled visits, same thing, but without the agenda. You're always going to be prepared as you're required to be by a code. When you're walking the site with the OSHPD staff, invite others from the construction team, like the superintendent, special inspectors if you have them, and hopefully your DPR would be there to tag along as well. Identify the good points with the not so good points. You don't want to be just showing all the negative. You want to show some of the positive as well. You want to be able to be also displaying a level of competence that instills confidence with the OSHPD field staff that you're providing the competent inspections that we're all required to do. When it comes to data reports, read the section in the administrative code 7-145, section A6, what's in your daily report. Then when it comes to ethics, what are you wearing on your t-shirt, your hat, your lunchbox? What kind of messages are you sending out? Is the superintendent buying you coffee or offering you lunch or t-shirts? Or you want to be conscious of the message that you're sending out. You want to maintain professionalism at all times because credibility is, it takes a long time to build credibility and it takes such a short time to lose it. When it comes to the code books, check in the code books for the matrix adoption table. There's also marginal markings. There's a lot of things that are self-explanatory in the beginning of all your code books on your binders. Take a look at those too. And when it comes to documentation, when in doubt, document whether or not it is the temperature, the weather, how many people are on site, who visited, what phone calls you received, and so on. And that looks like that's about the end of the survey that we got. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So now the next is about questions and answer. And we can, Joe, what do you think? Do we want to try to do the raise hand since we have time and maybe we can have the answer live like that? Or
Sure.
should we?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Thank you for the presentation. That was great. And for the folks on the call, the Inspection Services Unit has been answering questions in the questions box as we go to the best of our ability. And if you have additional questions, feel free to email them to us or throw them in the box. Or what we thought we would try as a unit, and we haven't done this before, so, you guys may have to be patient while we try it out. It's technology, so we'll see how it works out. What we thought we would do is do a hand raise if you want to talk, have a question about something specific. We can unmute you and you can ask your question or make a comment that could benefit the group at large here. So Caesar, I'll hand off in your direction as far as that goes. But well, yeah, that's what we'll try.
Thanks, Joe. So what we have here is if you have a question or want to make a comment, please go ahead and click the little hand raise next to your name. And what we will do is we'll monitor the panel and call on people who did raise their hands to either ask a question or make a comment. So the first one that I see here is Robert Schultz. I'll go ahead and unmute you and ask you to unmute your mic if you can, and we can try and go about it that way.
Do you hear me, Caesar?
Robert, yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so it actually went hand in hand with Dave Carina's, one of his last statements. I was actually going to send you an email later today. I was reviewing the reference code sections and code books for the exam, and the California Fire Code is listed obviously as one of the reference sections or codes to look at. But as I look through the matrix adoption tables on each one of those chapters out of the California Fire Code, I don't see any of the chapters adopted by any of the OSHPD 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so I was curious, without being too specific as far as the exam, is the attention that we need to be looking at for exam preparation more related to NFPA requirements when it comes to the fire life safety end, or am I missing something out of the California Fire Code that I should be looking at for studying?
So I can try to provide an answer to that. So typically when it comes to the IOR exam, you're going to be tested on all of the California Building Standards codes, right? And being that the chapter 1 of the California Building Standards Code has a lot to do with a lot of fire protection, fire design, but also some of the California Fire Code. NFPA is also a referenced material. So I can't be specific as to which specific book to bring, but we as an organization, we will be pulling questions from all of those references that you mentioned.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Anybody else that would like to raise their hand and we can call on? So please feel free. This is something new we're trying. And I'd like to encourage anyone to speak up or maybe share an experience or a question.
So maybe in the meantime, they were waiting for the raising hand. We might answer to some of the questions that already have been asked.
I do see Fernando Carlos raised his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and try to unmute you and unmute yourself as well, Fernando.
Yes, so my question would be in regards to the code book. What's the applicable code books that are going to be on the test? Is it 2019, 2016?
2019.
2019. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to that, we do have a list of acceptable reference materials on our website that you can always open up and download, and it'll give you a good idea of what material you're allowed to bring into the exams as well. And that's what we're going to base our exam off of.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
And this
Again,
is, I want to still emphasize about the index, because especially between the 2016 and 2019 there have been modifications. So if you are, let's say, very familiar with the 2016 code, that you remember a specific section to be in a specific place, doesn't mean the 2019 code will have the same location. So again, the index will guide you better.
And we have another hand raised by Mr. Roque Ritchie. I'll go ahead and unmute you. So if you can do the same and unmute yourself on your end, that'd be great.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the test. I keep on seeing to be determined as far as when we're going to have the next test. Do we have any specifics for that?
Yeah. Can I answer this one? This is Joe Labrie. Am I coming across here? I'm having some technical issues. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the question. I know it's something everybody's asking and everybody wants an answer. We are really working hard to get the answer. We are exploring multiple possibilities. Just so you all know what some of those possibilities are looking like, we're talking about, and again, until the leadership has a chance to give us a final direction, and they're working with the director's office, the folks at OSHPD are working with the director's office to get absolute confirmation that we can do this. But because of COVID-19 and because of all that's going on, we've all been kind of hindered to be able to progress with this. But some of the things that Michelle LaChica, who's on the part of Inspection Services Unit, and she's on the call today, the things that she's been working on to explore is, and I think Nancy Rebenstorf is also working with her, who's also on the call, to explore possibilities of using hotels or other venues that we could pull people into, since the state building is not allowing large groups of people to accumulate or assemble in those areas. So that's still a possibility. What we're finding out, though, is it's an amazing, a tremendous expense. It's like they know it's the state of California and they need space, and so they're coming at us with very high prices. So we're trying to work through that. The other possibility that's probably going to be more viable is that we're trying to work out a schedule to where we would test multiple times a week between now and the end of the year, with only a handful of people coming in at a time to test. And so it's going to take an immense amount of coordination, if we're allowed to do this, to schedule all of you, to schedule everybody to be on, sometime in the next, several months to come in and, take the test that way. So what I would invite you to do and encourage you to do, whether it's certification or recertification, is all the webinar things that we're doing are all part of trying to take the heat and load off of the testing requirements and the gathering of people. So participate in those as much as you can, because those will help us when it comes time to take the test to be able to say, all right, you meet this requirement, you met that requirement. And in the meantime, I expect within the next week or so, and again, I don't control this call, but within this time frame, something like that, we'll be able to put it out that we have a plan in place and this is what it looks like. And then we will very aggressively be working with you to get you on a schedule to come get tested.
Okay. So that's going to include like a timeline, so we'll know when the test is, and then it's not, hey, you're taking a test tomorrow. Good luck.
No, it won't be like that. There's going to be more coordination. So we would call you up and say, hey, we got a slot in July or August, and you say, well, I'm on vacation for 2 months. So we say, okay, how about September? So anyways, we'll work with you all so that we can get everybody tested. We're going to do everything we can to get everybody tested between now and the end of the year that need to be tested.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So next we have Dale, if you're still there. I believe you had a question, maybe. Go ahead and unmute you, and maybe you can do the same now yourself.
I did, but that last respondent just asked my question. It was on the date of the exam, so thank you.
Perfect. Okay. And I believe, Brian, you had a question, so I'll go ahead and unmute you, and if you could do the same, maybe we can answer your question.
Hi, I was just hoping to see if you can give me a little information about your first step once you actually pass the exam. I can't imagine that I'm just going to automatically get a project and jump right into it and work on it. Do you recommend working under another Class A inspector, or do you guys help people get into their first project?
I think that's a great question. Dave, Karina, if you're still there, is that something that maybe you can answer? If you can, please unmute yourself and maybe go over the process of that.
Hey, while Dave's doing that, if he can do that, this is Joe Labrie. Let me just make a comment that I think is so awesome that you asked that question. As OSHPD, we're not. It's not within our responsibilities or purview to help get people placed onto projects. But I recognize, and there are people on this call and others and part of ACIA who are very interested in the business of being an inspector, and very important that IORs understand the business dimension to that. It's not something we do at OSHPD, but connecting with people like ACIA and others, it's key, and I would encourage you to do that. But is Dave there? Not.
I'm trying to.
This is James Pan, DAC.
There we go.
I can share some information. So, in Southern California, we do have some IOR providing firms who have been doing a lot of marketings and business relationship with the facility owners, and the IORs are to be provided by the owner, not by OSHPD. So, to get your first job, you might need to work under one of those company. None of them are employees other than the owner, and you might, work under them on one of the project and kind of start off your first OSHPD project. And then that's just kind of my take on it. So now I will hand over to Dave.
It looks like we have Dave Karina back, so maybe Dave, you can chime in on that.
Somebody forgot to unmute me there. So I was sending text out. Anyway, I would, Joe, thank you. I would highly recommend becoming a member of ACIA. Get familiar with them. They have a lot of contacts for these, and yes, I would definitely. Once you pass your test, you definitely want to work alongside with somebody that's got some experience, so you can at least start learning the ropes, because you don't want to get eaten alive out there by the contractors if you get thrown on your first project alone. And a lot of that too is experience is also a main factor on getting OSHPD approval to be on a project. So you're best off working alongside with somebody like James. James actually gave a good reference as well. But that's my take as far as getting experience working with somebody that's got the experience. Join ACIA.
I'll piggyback on one last comment I'll make as it relates to again to this issue, and this is Joe Labrie. We have been monitoring IORs and how many are out there, and we are seeing a continuing decline in the number of IORs out there, and a continuing increase in the amount of work that's available to IORs out there, and continuing to come. So my message to all of you is the IORs. This has never been a better time to become an IOR. You work out the business pieces, you get those first couple of projects, but there's not going to be any shortage of work. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, and if I can add something to that, Joe, it's highly encouraged. And if you have questions as to what exactly you need to be an IOR, there's a California Administrative Code, Section 7-204, that gives you really the outline of what the minimum requirements are. And if you have any questions as to how to meet that, or if you meet that with your current background and experience, and are quite unsure and you're borderline whether to put in your application or not, don't stop. Pick up the phone or give us send us an email and ask the question, and we're more than happy to have that conversation with you as an inspection services unit to say, well, let's look at your background and let's take a look and dig deeper as to what you have, and maybe you do qualify when you think you don't. Okay, so with that, anybody else want to raise their hand and have a comment or a question? We have about 5 minutes left of the slotted 1 hour that we had scheduled for this presentation. This is really good conversation. So take advantage of the opportunity. You have a lot of good resources, a lot of knowledge here on the phone on this presentation now to just get your question across, or clarify any kind of doubt or issues that you might have or concerns.
Jason, Maureen, I see. Brian,
did you have another question?
Oh, no, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, with that, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who joined us for today. Again, this was session 4 of our 5-part series. We have our last presentation, session 5 of the 5-part, coming up July 15th, and that's going to provide a summary of all the first parts of the IOR presentations. We do have our email, so feel free to use that. We can answer specific questions, provide you PDF presentations of past presentations if you didn't get it. I know a couple of individuals already asked for session 2 and other sessions, so we're going to go ahead and send those out. Again, the email address is OSHPD or oshpd.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. Again, that's oshpd.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. And also want to give you the information that we are going to be presenting another 5-part presentation series on the IOR recertification. So if you are a current IOR and you're used to recertifying by attending one of the presentations that OSHPD puts together that you need to attend in order to qualify you to recertify, we are going a different approach. We will be going and presenting a 5-part IOR series for that recertification in lieu of that 1-day-long presentation. So if you want to jot down the dates, it's July 22nd, July 29th, August 5th, August 12th, and August 19th. For the IOR recertification webinars. If you are a current IOR and need to recertify and have more questions, feel free to email us at that email address we gave. We do have one more presentation today for dealing with COVID-19, specific for the public and DPORs or design professionals of record. You as may be interested in joining. So again, that's at 1 o'clock today. And that's it for today. And we want to thank you for joining our presentation of session 4 as to how to become an IOR. Thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.